And we're on. Hello. Hey, everybody. I'm Dan Banis. With me this evening is Good Boy. How are you doing, Good Boy?
I'm good. Dan, how you doing, brother?
I'm exhausted. I've got, for the time being, I've got another dog in my life, as it happens.
What the fuck?
Um, yeah,
What are
I
you talking
know.
about? I thought we're a team, man.
Oh boy,
Don't you know
awkward.
how this goes?
Yeah,
You throw shit, I bring it back.
yeah,
You know, it's
I
my
know.
house too. You know that kind of
Well,
thing.
the problem is, so I found a dog who's uh, an off camera dog, basically, and I hope I feel like there's different relationships for different different areas. Does that make sense?
You know what? I'm still totally confused by this, but I'm gonna press on like nothing happened
Okay.
because I'm a
Okay.
dog. So we're gonna have to.
Yeah, that's what they do. Well, yeah. I'm watching a puppy. Still on the fence if it's going to be my puppy, just depending on logistics of everything. But he's adorable and amazing, but horribly exhausting. So it's been very tiring. But yeah, otherwise been good. Everything's pretty good, pretty chill. Um, so I called you here this evening because it happens to be, I don't know if you know this or not, but it's Oscar night.
It's a big night in Hollywood.
Big night in Hollywood, where I lived for a number of years.
You
So,
made it, and you made it out. Look at you.
and now I don't live in Hollywood. Yes, I moved down to Orange County,
Well
which
done.
it's all right. Yeah, so far so good.
Gonna buy a lawnmower now? How's this work?
No, I don't have a lawn, but it's a much fancier apartment. That's for sure. So that's nice. Yeah. So tonight's the biggest night of Hollywood's biggest night of the year. Um, but here's the thing that I noticed recently: Hollywood is dead. It doesn't really exist anymore. I don't think a lot of people don't seem to be aware of that, especially in Hollywood. But it's not a viable business. It probably never was, and there's nothing really to say about it anymore.
And Dan, I'm
I'm
going to
really
push
gonna
back a
be
little bit. I'm going to push back a little bit.
okay.
And you know what? I'm doing this because I'm a New York pup. What the hell do I know? But
Mhm.
you were in the heat of the fire for quite some time. So I'm curious. I mean, when you say it was never a viable business, I mean, I get it. There's like so much risk involved, and
Exactly.
very few people ever see a profit in this sort of things, even successful
Hmm.
uh ventures from the box office. Some people lose money on that on the other end of things. So
Right.
um I totally hear you. However, you cannot deny the sheer power that an influence Hollywood has had over the past 60 100 years even.
Well, that is true. It's had a lot of influence, a lot of power, but so did Bernie Madoff for a while, and look what happened now.
Times change.
Yeah, and also in hindsight, it became clear that he never had any actual power. It was all smoke and mirrors. And Hollywood is nothing if not smoke and mirrors. So tonight is the Oscars, and it's very interesting because it seems in recent years that everyone in the city has been sniping each other, trying to take each other down. There's like this weird idea that it's no longer an ever expanding pie, but that everyone's just trying to get what they can while the sun's shining. There was the sense for a few decades, really, I would say the 70s, the 80s, and to an extent the 90s, it just seemed flush and it was just going to be flush forever. So many movies were doing really wonderfully well, incredible business, and everything was going hunky dory. Now, here's what I want to go over in a very pedantic sort of way.
Let's
Um,
get fucking pedantic.
let's get pedantic. So, people might
T-shirt.
say, hey, Kabarett, Dan Bannis, good boy. Hollywood is doing amazingly well. Look at the box office. Look at Black Panther. It made $700 million in the United
$700 million. See, I'm on the fans' side. I'm asking questions like, how can you say it's not viable?
Mm-hmm. Did you watch Black Panther, by the way?
No, I didn't watch Black Panther.
Neither did I.
Do you know why? And do you know why? It has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that I am not a superhero comic book movie fan. All right, the only superhero films I've ever watched was Batman with the Prince soundtrack, which was fucking unbelievable. The best superhero film ever made, hands down. The old Superman with Christopher Reeves, right?
Yes.
That was a big one. There was a Spider-Man TV show that I had on VHS that I wore the tapes out as a kid because I thought all New York-based comic stuff was actually real, you know, because it took place in New York, so clearly it had to be real.
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles, if you would call them a superhero, that's kind of comic booky, though.
It's in the vein.
It's in the vein, sure. But outside of that, in terms of modern comic book movies, this new Marvel universe, all this stuff, what have I seen? I've seen the second Thor film, and that's it. That's all I've seen. I'm out of the game. I just don't find
I haven't even seen.
I don't find.
I haven't seen Thor. I haven't seen Captain America. Nope. I liked those old Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, and because I like Sam Raimi. I think he's a good director. But I have barely seen any of them. So when Black Panther, and also Black Panther looked cheesy. The effects looked bad, like objectively bad. And this isn't just me saying this. That's pretty common criticism. So anyway, we'll see. It might win Best Picture this year. But the problem is nobody cares. Nobody cares about the Oscars anymore. I'm really curious to see what the ratings are going to look like tomorrow, because I have a feeling, and a lot of people feel this way as well, it's going to be a shit show. It's probably going to get very small audience. In fact, let me pull up an article right now. From what I hear, here we go. Pull this up. Can you see that?
Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that.
Oscars rating drops. ABC offering advertisers guarantees for the first time, although the network denies it. But so the idea is everyone just assumes that the ratings are going to be horrible to the point where they're guaranteeing a floor. So if it goes below a certain, it's like an insurance policy for people who are bought ad space with the Oscars. Because the thing is, no one's excited about movies. No one really cares anymore. And there's a lot of hype. I understand that might sound silly, because we still hear about these movies. A lot of people be like, yeah, but I watched Avengers. I liked it. And I'm not saying you didn't. I'm not even saying you shouldn't. I'm sure there's some fun stuff. But here's the thing. This is Box Office Mojo. Great site for just crunching data. So
it's a data-driven website for movies.
Sure. Okay. So this is 2019, the current year. Right. 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014. Okay. This year thus far, over the last 2 months, the box office is down 25% from 2018. That's insane. Like, think about an industry that just plummets 25% in sales in any industry in basically a full quarter almost. 14% almost from 2017, 18% nearly from 2016, 16% from 2015, and about 9% from 2014. Every year in the last, so this box office year, movie going has dropped dramatically in the
Can
last
you
5 years.
explain the stat right there? I mean, that I'm following what you're saying, but the stat right there over your cursor, that 32.8%. Can you explain what that percentage point means? There's 2018 on the year, but it says 2019 percentage change. So can you explain that?
Oh, this number here?
Right. What does that mean?
Okay, so that's a good question. So this is how much higher it is from the previous year. Okay, so
previous year.
Okay, so 2018's box office was 30, almost 33% higher than 2019.
Well, how is it? Well, 2019 isn't even over yet.
Right, up to this point.
I see.
Yeah. So it's kind of a math thing, but so 2018 was almost 33% higher up to this point. The first 2 months of 2018 were 33% higher than 2019.
This is just for the period of January 1st to February 24th.
Exactly.
So it's a snapshot of that time frame, that 7-8 weeks.
Right.
Throughout from 2014, that snapshot all the way up through currently 2019.
Precisely.
Okay.
Let me take care of this. I think you guys.
So it looks like the best possible year was last year. Last year they did great. Is that incorrect in how I'm reading this data?
Can you wait a minute? Hold on 1 second.
Because it says gross right there is 14, which is the lowest it's ever been in that table, right? That's the lowest it's been.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So it looks like exactly.
Just plummeted after 2018.
Right, but it also
on track for two, right? On track for $2,000 million, so $2 billion.
Yes, it's a huge plummet just in the last couple months. However, that is still sugarcoating things. So it looks like last year was a huge year for the box office, right? Like the biggest ever.
Yeah, for sure.
However, here's you can see this screen now. Yearly box office, tickets sold. Now, I used to do Hollywood stuff, so I follow stuff pretty closely, and it used to be a hobby of mine too. I still do follow it because mostly at this point, I'm just entertained by the decline. And I've come to revile much of Hollywood, so I kind of just, I like to watch it fall apart.
Me too.
Yeah. So last year, the number of tickets sold. This is, I think, I guess it's like millions. So it's 1.3 billion tickets sold. I believe that's what that is. So last year, 1.3 billion tickets sold. However, it was the highest grossing year. That's strictly because of ticket price inflation.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
So if you look at it, 2018 was a pretty decent year compared to 2017, but it was less than 2016. It was less than 2015. It was less than 2013. It was less than 2012. Less than 2010. Way less than 2009. Less than 2008. It peaked. The box office peaked in 2002. About 16 years ago, 15 years ago, with 1,500, almost 1,600 tickets sold. The other thing is the population of the U.S. has grown dramatically in that time. So there's been far more people here in the country, but the number of tickets sold has remained stagnant at best and really gone down quite a bit.
Well, I'm curious to analyze this a little further.
Mm-hmm.
You can help me out. What I did notice, a number that jumps out is just how many movies have come out since 2014. an average of, look, 700, 706,
That's a great point.
737, 740, 770.
872 movies
I
in
mean, you just
2018.
capped that off with an extra 100, no problem, in
Right.
2018. And
So,
even then, the ticket sales
hmm
compared to '02
hmm when
are,
there were there was half the number of movies in 2002, and far more tickets sold.
so you would actually say on average, each theater was twice as full.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly right.
I mean, that's crazy to think
So
about just
yeah,
20 years. I
right.
mean, less than that
Less
if
than
you're, if
15.
you're
Yeah,
15, yeah, closer to 15 than you are 20.
right.
I mean,
So
that's crazy.
so the reason people think that Hollywood is bustling is because of the way that they, it's just wizardry. It's just the way Owen Benjamin would put it. It's just statistical wizardry. They fudge the numbers, they tweak them here and there, but when you really break them down, it's an industry in decline.
Hmm.
It's falling apart. And you can see it because the Oscar ratings are down as well. They can't even get a host for a number of reasons,
For a
which
number of
is
reasons. If the guy says no, they're running him off the stage, and they're
mhm.
what's the term that these people are doing now? It's called like offensive archival diving or something like that, where they're basically
I
just
don't
saying,
even know.
who is this person? Now let's
Mhm.
go through all of their online records from the moment they entered the threshold of the internet, and let's just see if we can't find something that's offensive. Like
Mhm.
that's like a new hobby now. Whenever a new person gets named, to whatever
Mhm.
sort of thing, whether it's the head of a position of a company or hosting the Oscars, it could be anything.
Right. And here's the thing. I personally believe this economic crunch is really the reason why they've relied so heavily on social justice. It's a Hail Mary pass because they can't get people to go see movies, so they shame them. They shame them into buying their product. Otherwise, they'll be viewed as sexist or racist or what have you because they've tried every other trick and they've failed. So this is what they do. And the proof is right here that like they're certainly that the proof that they're struggling and that they're trying basically anything. Um, and the thing is, like, people can say, yeah, but they're still, regardless, they're still making billions of dollars. Okay, that's not the way it works, though. People need to understand economics. Um, if you're a company or an industry and you're not growing, then you're dying. That's just a simple economic fact. Like, if you're not on the upswing, you're on the decline. And no one wants to be part of a decline. When something starts to decline, it's like a snowball, and soon it's going to be nothing. It's going to be dead. So I see Hollywood as really losing their influence, and I think a lot of people will be happy to hear that. I think it's a good thing overall because I become a lot more critical of like a lot of movies and people in Hollywood, that I used to admire. A lot of them have either gone full social justice, or I've reevaluated, their contributions as human beings. I mean, in the post Harvey Weinstein world, which a lot of that is silly nonsense. But at the same token, I have to admit, people like Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, I've reevaluated how I feel about them, and I'm finding it harder than I used to separate, an artist from their art. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would like to speak on that because I've constantly tried to do that, and I think I have I would say I do have the ability to look at the art for what it is portraying and take that in.
Hmm.
Um, but also having that information about the artist changes how I enjoy or interpret the art to
Hmm.
some degree. It this new information is not the same way I looked at this art before knowing this information. So it doesn't change what the art is. It just changes how people take it in,
Hmm.
because of that added information. So
Yeah.
I will stand by the fact that art is art, and if you're bringing information about the artist to that art, you are bringing something to the art, and
Yes.
you are in and of itself changing how it is to be interpreted. But the art itself is to be interpreted, and how that happens, it could, you might interpret a Woody Allen film completely differently than me if I was ignorant of what he has done in
Hmm.
his past. Um, now, uh, but I will concede that you do bring that with you when you take in a piece of art information
Yeah.
about the artist, as well you should. I think
Hmm.
that is part of interpreting it the same way you would say, like, oh, they painted this during World War One, or they were a veteran, or whatever.
Hmm.
I think you're supposed to keep that stuff in mind, and draw certain conclusions. But in a very postmodern way, I also believe that art kind of is what you want it to be, in many different ways. So,
Hmm.
uh, to touch base on what you were referring to, with the death of the industry, the death of Hollywood,
Right.
I I cheer for the death of Hollywood. I really do. I think it's people should not have a monopoly on art, especially visual art like film. I think it's a disgrace. I think movies that came out that really touched me as a young man growing up are movies that would never be made now, because there's no guarantee of $500 million ticket sales, right?
Hmm.
So there's no way that someone would sign off on a Goodwill Hunting, let's say, or anything like that. Um, and yet, I'm nervous because once that major uh, apparatus of the Hollywood industry is dismantled, it is up to individuals to create and post and get that information out there. And what you need for that is freedom. And
Hmm.
I just don't think that filmmakers have the freedom to truly express themselves as honestly as they always have. I think lesser now because of the political tension, because of the climate, because of the social justice uh, do-gooders out there that need to
Yeah.
evaluate everything. And I think we may have transferred the problems of Hollywood into the greater sphere of independent filmmaking if we do see uh, Hollywood self-destruct. Now, I would hope that the market sort of corrects that. There's tons of organizations out there dying for independent projects, no matter what the subject matter is. So I'm optimistic, but I hope that we don't see a clamping down, further regulation in the independent field,
Hmm.
if we start seeing a decline, uh, or a true crash in the Hollywood market. I don't know what your take on that
Sure.
is.
Um, yeah, no, see, that's the thing. I guess I certainly welcome Hollywood's decline and Hollywood's death. The sooner the better, the way I see it. And that's exactly right. It's actually very bizarre that Hollywood is still such a strong presence. Why is it that you have to go to this one stupid little city in Southern California if you want to have a career, as an artist, as a filmmaker, as a producer, as a director, as an actor, as any of this stuff? You don't. Like, you definitely don't. You haven't had to, at least since, the late 90s, when the internet was really flourishing for the first time. And yet we still pretend like you do. And, people still act like you do. Hollywood certainly still acts like you do, but you don't. You just don't. And it's sort of perplexing that you haven't seen little versions of Hollywood. It's funny, even when there is like anything at all, they're like, well, Hollywood comes to Atlanta or Hollywood comes to Detroit or whatever. It's like, just be Detroit and make movies. Like we don't need Hollywood at all. No one does.
Yeah, I've definitely
Um,
heard the
yeah,
analogy to Atlanta
yeah,
being a hot spot, but the idea of, like you said, oh, it's the new Hollywood or Hollywood comes here.
right.
It's like, no, Hollywood's just dying off on their own, and
Mhm.
we don't need to make and produce movies there. They could be
Right.
anywhere.
Yeah.
But good luck achieving the same sort of, I guess, fame and promotability as some that doesn't
Well,
come here.
that's the
I don't
key.
know.
Dismantling the system, the giant structure that they have with bizarre labyrinthine deals between theaters, studios, actors, all that. Like that's what's keeping them in Hollywood. Is that it's really just like a corporate cluster, a real quagmire. So um, as those things are untangled, it'll be amazing. It'll be really exciting to see. Hopefully, these art being decentralized. Like, why is it that you have to go to Hollywood to make movies that speak to people in Idaho or Oklahoma or Hong Kong for that matter, anywhere on Earth? And it is true, like China has a flourishing film industry these days that is giving Hollywood a run for their money, and you can see other countries do as well, but nothing still quite to the same extent. But their influence is waning. It peaked decades ago now, and it's like it's just time to close up shop. E- Everyone knows it, and like you can see it with just the desperation. There's not the same sense of excitement at all, and they try to they try these silly tricks to get you to kind of feel interested at all or engaged
I
at
would also
all.
say
Yeah.
what I find to be interesting, the internet really did blow everything up, you know.
Hmm.
There's this there used to be this mystique about the Hollywood aristocratic life and
Yeah.
parties where, so and so would show up and then the Rat Pack was there and it's like,
Right.
what the fuck was happening? It was such a what a place. The secrets about Marilyn Monroe were going to be revealed in a book to come out
Yeah.
later. Now you have Scarlett Johansson
Yeah.
tweeting and people that just, hey, this is how I feel about certain things. People are speaking directly into their phone and to the world, to their
Hmm.
millions and millions of followers. And I feel like, I mean, Hollywood is, I mean, you ever just look at these people, you go like, you're just normal people. Like you're not like some
Hmm.
sort of, you know, I don't know. You're not holier than thou. You're just people. You're just
Yeah.
fucking. You're not saints in a religion. I mean, you're just an asshole. That the thing you studied, and even if you're a professional and you're really good at it, you're really good at acting. Okay, but you're still a person. It's just like,
Yeah.
I ran into a very, very talented engineer that did major projects that blew me away. I said, I mean, I can't believe you worked on that building and this and that. Like, oh yeah, for sure. And at the same time, they were just a normal person, normal dude.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there isn't, it's like, that's the phrase, don't meet your heroes. You'll be uh
Yeah.
unimpressed, because they're just people.
Right.
And I feel like we have gotten to know our heroes in Hollywood through things
And
like
yeah,
Twitter in the past 10 years. And honestly, I don't think people are as impressed as they used to be anymore. I think they could really care the
it's
fuck
pretty
less.
ugly. Well, yeah, no one wants to go to a party with like Mark Ruffalo, like, like no one cares. It's not as exciting. It's like no one has the mystique of, James Dean or Sinatra, like you said, or any of these people, Humphrey Bogart. Like no
I mean,
one
the
cares.
Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I don't
It,
think anyone's storing away a tell-all about Jimmy fucking Fallon.
Right.
Like no one,
Yeah.
like you said, no one cares. He's not a man. I gotta be honest with you. He's not a man that commands respect. Any person that has to get in tears and apologize
Mhm.
on TV on your own show is probably not of the same caliber as that man from Nebraska. From what I understand, I think he's from
Yeah,
Nebraska.
he
Uh,
is. Yeah, I
uh,
actually helped write one of those exposés from his attorney Henry Bushkin,
Holy
who's a
smokes,
famous
man! Well,
Hollywood attorney. Yeah.
he was the entertainer's entertainer, and
Hmm.
what I also loved about Tonight Show with Johnny Carson
Yeah.
is that he wouldn't always have celebrities on. Sometimes he would have normal
Right.
fucking people, like just normal. This is Estelle, and she she was around when the Whig Party was still was still in position of voting, and I always thought that that was an interesting thing, and my folks always talked about that, as like, hey, late night television, it wasn't just about who's who, and like you said, this sort of like, the rich and famous of Hollywood and this elite
Mhm.
of Hollywood. It was, they saved that mystique for when you did have those people on, but late night also had just average people on there. Like, hey, we're gonna talk to this farmer who grew the biggest pumpkin, and it was like a little kitschy. I'm not gonna lie, sure, but
Hey.
at the same time, it is important to always keep things in perspective. And normal people are fucking people too.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I think we had a wonderful guest on who was very intelligent, and Mr. Tyler, last name escapes me, Burns
Goldstein. Yeah.
Goldstein, and Tyler was wonderful. He brought a lot of expertise to what he was talking about. Found it very interesting. And Tyler's by no means a Hollywood elite, but
No,
I
he's not.
I think there are plenty of just average people that I would love to just put a microphone from them, see what they have to say about the world, and if anything, be it more like a time capsule sort of vibe.
For
Uh,
sure.
yeah. So yeah. So that interview was or that discussion we had with Tyler was fascinating. I loved it. Would love to have him on again, and I just want to thank him for coming on. It was a
Yeah,
blast.
that was awesome. Yeah, he was great. So Tyler, if you're watching, thanks for coming. And yeah, so anyway, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get off my chest, because I don't think people quite a lot of people just don't quite get it, and or they've heard, they hear both sides. I just wanted to break it down and make it completely clear. Yes, the movie industry is it's falling apart. The numbers just bear it out when you really look at them, when you really scrutinize them. Now, I will say one thing, like with streaming and all that, that does certainly play a role, but honestly, I just don't think it's the same. It doesn't have the same it doesn't have the same mystique, the same intrigue. And so, regardless, I just see in the long run, it appears that the power of the city is waning, and you can see it too with like the most powerful figures in the city, like Harvey Weinstein and people like that, are getting taken down, and I don't see anyone really replacing them. So that's a great thing, because a lot of these people are pure scumbags. Um, so it's a fascinating time. I'm happy. Like it's when I decided that I didn't care about like Hollywood at all anymore. It was a huge load off for me, because like they kind of when you're in the middle of it and you're surrounded by aspiring actors and stuff, there's a real pressure to get involved and be on top of it, and it's very vapid and shallow and soul sucking. So it's a great feeling to stop caring at all. You do feel a little like out of the loop because uh, at least for me, it's like I became so disdainful that I became a little bit cynical, believe it or not.
No,
And
not you.
so it was hard to talk to some people, but uh, ultimately, it's a great feeling because it's like it opens you up to start, supporting independent creators and doing your own stuff and just being a human being. So
Can I just
yeah.
point something out? Now, I pulled up the CNN Oscars live
Mhm.
news stream, and I just want to
Yeah.
read some
Can
of the
do you want to? Can you put it up on
yeah,
the?
sure, I could do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Let's do it.
I just want to pull up some of the headlines that are on this thing. It's unreal. All right, can you see this?
hmm
All right. Okay. This one says Oscars are the Oscars.
Oscars
And
are so not
no,
white this year. Wow. I mean, look.
I mean, like who? I mean, look, that's fine, and
Sure, of
I
course.
really don't give a shit. But the fact that we have to view everything through this prism of who is and isn't represented is so weird to me. As a
hmm
white person, I guess, right? All the fucking power and privilege I have. I just it makes me uncomfortable that we have to start looking at things that way because I, as a white person, never did that with white people. So now it's weird for me to do it with anybody. Okay.
hmm
And I don't know, maybe that's I'm part of the problem, if you will. But
hmm
personally, I was told that racism was based in the idea that people treat people differently based on their race. So I avoided trying to do that. And I tried to look into more worthwhile things to judge someone on, like how they treat other people or whether they were polite or nice or,
Well,
helpful.
didn't you
But
know that makes you a right wing
this year,
wacko?
it's not so it's so not white this year, and that's evidently a great thing. It just feels more inclusive, right? Some presenters spoke Spanish. Oh my goodness. Congratulations. What a wonderful thing. Some spoke Spanish. How great is that? Like we would ever turn on Telemundo and be like, they spoke English. I'm pretty impressive. It was great. I feel like you're trying to
Uh,
invite more people onto this. Uh, Look at this. A film about menstruation just won an Oscar.
uh,
And look at these happy ladies. They are just screaming into the mic. This one has her fist raised in triumph. It's like literally how
yeah.
scientists should look when they've found out they've beaten cancer, right?
Right.
And this is period, end of sentence, a movie that aims to end the stigma of masturbation. First of all, I can say as definitive as there is no stigma around uh,
Wait,
menstruation.
is
Excuse
it?
me,
Is this? Yeah, yeah.
menstruation. Yeah, let me correct myself.
What?
There's
I don't
there's
understand. But like, what does that even mean, though?
there's
Uh,
like the stigma around it. Like we live in the 1820s where I just have to scratch my head and go something 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 about a rag, and I don't know the rest. Like goodness, Jesus
like,
Christ, like who the fuck can't like this is a watershed moment. Like this is a moment. Green Book
well,
wins
no
for
one.
Best
People.
Original Screenplay. That's another one. Lovely. It's about racism in the South in the 60s. Great. What else can we revisit? Oh,
Yeah.
Spike Lee wins his first Oscar ever for The Black Klansman.
Which I saw with Spike Lee in audience.
And how
Yeah,
did
he
he
did a
react?
Q&A. What's that?
How was that reaction?
No, he acted like a real prick. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it was a Q&A, and he just stonewalled the interviewer the whole time. I think it was because I believe the screening was the night after the Golden Globes, and they got shut out. I think that's what it was. It was some award show, and he was just really bitter. And he was just really snide. Stonewalled him. Was very glib, condescending. Everyone in the audience was just awkwardly laughing to exert to kind of diffuse the tension. It was just really, really uncomfortable. I mean, I think Spike Lee is a super talented director.
for sure.
Black Klansman was a very adequate movie with some really obnoxious uh, stuff at the end, just like news clips out of context and stuff. And but overall, it was fine. It was an okay movie, not a great movie, not his best work by any means. And like when you're, I don't know. It was just very blatant Oscar baiting and movie. So
Also, I want
yeah.
to point something out. There was the Oscars So White for, and they're like, look, for a country in which, X amount of white people make up the population, shouldn't it reflect the diversity of our country? But no one talks about Asian American representation. No one talks about Latin American representation. I think if you were to do strictly by the numbers, I think aren't African Americans overrepresented at the Oscars? I mean,
I
clearly
mean,
it appears
it
so.
certainly seems like this year from what I can see. But
I think
that's the weird thing.
Atheism is Unstoppable did that when Oscars So White came out, and he just hit that out of the park. And like you
Yeah,
said, back then, maybe even then, to say,
yeah,
well, even now, blacks are overrepresented in the categories or whatever. But surely this year, overrepresented. Now, to me,
right.
that doesn't mean anything. I don't care. Like, I really don't. Makes no difference to me because I'm not watching the Oscars. I really don't care about it. For me, fun, interesting film was always
Hmm.
word of mouth through my friends that I respected their opinions in film.
Yeah.
I had a friend sit me down and say, you have to watch Russian Doll. You have to watch Russian Doll on Netflix. And I finally saw it, and I thought it was very interesting and very unique and different. Netflix is more of the front runner of what people consider to be visual entertainment now than Hollywood will ever be again.
Yeah.
So, and you can have as many different creators on there as you want, making as many different things. Now they're clamping down a little bit. Certain things can't be shown, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. You should have an
Well,
open
yeah.
platform,
And they are seriously embracing politics too. I mean, I believe it's is it Susan Rice from the Obama administration is now on the board of Netflix. I believe
what about
Susan Rice.
what about the Obamas?
And I mean, the Obamas
themselves.
Right. So it has become like just a blatant propaganda arm. But ultimately they do. I mean, I did like Roma as a film. I'm a big Alfonso Cuarón fan. I think he does great work. But I mean, they still do some good stuff. Norm Macdonald had a great show on Netflix. They do some good stuff.
That's
but
still on the Norm Show.
No, it got canceled, of course.
Netflix canceled it.
But at the end of the day, they are moving in the wrong direction, like just about everything in Hollywood. But the thing is too, like when they made this insane like push towards race at the Oscars, it's just like obviously like once you win, if you are, like black or whatever, Hispanic or whatever, it's like for a fact that went through the voters' minds because they made damn sure that it had to. So it's like you always walk around with that, and you're like, oh well, what did they really notice my performance, or am I am I a diversity win? It's just it's a very uncomfortable position, and I haven't really seen many people bring that up, but it's like obviously true, and you can see like with all the celebration that they're getting now, the headlines from all the newspapers are like, finally diversity in the Oscars. It's like, okay, well, these individual like they're just individual people winning still, and they're doesn't their work count for anything? So
also, just the idea of award shows just being this like oh so powerful. Like you've been touched by those in
Right.
power, and you've been christened the
Well,
best this year's best film. Blah blah blah. You know
yeah.
what? It's nonsense. And do you know who? What was it?
Yeah.
The Grammys this year. What artist came up and basically ripped it apart? Who was that?
Oh, I'm not sure, but that's a good point. Like, at least no one takes the Grammys seriously. It's been a joke for as long as I can remember. Um, like, everyone assumes if you win a Grammy that everyone knows it's meaningless, that's just an award for and by scumbags. And it's like, I'm starting to see that more with the Oscars even as well. It's like, who cares? And I personally believe that there's probably it's probably not a particularly fair ballot. I think there's probably some manipulation at the
Absolutely.
top.
I I
So
I would I
yeah.
would 100% agree. I would
Hmm.
also say that, you know what, maybe in the entertainment industry, because these people are really typically start from the bottom, unless they've been, they're a cookie cutter corporate
Hmm.
concoction. They really start from the bottom. They build up a fan base, and if they make it in a big city, they get on the radio, whatever. You know, I
Hmm.
think I think those that are in the music business, unlike those that are in Hollywood, have a different sort of appreciation for the fact that, I mean, music is so subjective. Uh, it really is,
Hmm.
as opposed to film, which is in somewhat of a template.
Right.
Especially if you're going to win on the massive scale, right? Just like pop musicians garner more eyeballs and ears than the avant-garde, and the same thing is true in film. Those that are
Hmm.
coming out of major industries that can get these films out, not just in the U.S. but definitely across the ocean in places like Asia. Uh, these are uh, the pieces of art that make the biggest waves. But I thought when Drake accepted best, I think it was it best album or something like that, best rap song, he wins
Hmm.
his hit God's Plan, won for best rap song. And I'm gonna share this screen with you for a second just
Hmm.
so you could take a look. And he said, I want to take this opportunity while I'm up here to just talk to all the kids that are watching this aspiring to do music. All my peers that make music from their heart, that do things pure and tell the truth. I want to let you know that we're playing an in an opinion-based sport, not a factual-based sport. So it's not the NBA where at the end of the year you're holding up a trophy because you made the right decisions or won the games. This is a business where sometimes it's up to a bunch of people who might not understand what a mixed race kid from Canada has to say, or a fly Spanish girl from New York, or anybody else, or a brother from Houston right there, my brother Travis. But my point is, you've already won if you have people singing your songs word for word. If you're a hero in your hometown, look, if there's people who have regular jobs who are coming out in the rain, in the snow, spending their hard earned money to buy tickets to come to your shows, you don't need this right here. I promise you, you already won. And then they cut to commercial before you finish speaking. God forbid they realize that the jig is up and, they figured it out that art is
Yeah.
meant to be enjoyed by the person who's taking it in. And you can try and quantify this all you want. At the end of the day, if you didn't like the movie, it didn't speak to you. Uh,
Hmm.
and if you didn't like the song, it's not your style. And that's okay. That's fine. I mean, to kind of give these people so much fucking power. And
Yeah.
I think as movies have become more and more cookie cutter because you have to take less and less risks, movies
Hmm.
have become inherently less and less interesting. Whereas music, I feel, is constantly trying to reinvent itself because there's new people trying to break into the scene all the time,
Uh-huh.
and they're constantly trying to retool the what's being placed in front of them. Whereas if you want to make a big splash in the industry, you got to make sure the studio is going to sign off on it, and they're signing off on the safe bets, right? Which is why we saw that wave of remakes and reboots,
right?
You know.
And speaking of which, it appears Green Book won Best Picture by Peter Farrelly of the Farrelly brothers fame. So a movie that seemed like basically a Driving Miss Daisy meets, some Ray or whatever, Walk the Line,
Yeah,
silly
right.
biopic you want, a musical biopic. And I mean, what are the chances that anyone who's a film fan prefers it to Dumb and Dumber or Kingpin or Something About Mary? I'm going to assume almost none. No one's going to remember this movie.
Oh my God.
And it's like, he already made some great movies that everyone enjoys, that, and so it's like, whatever. No one really cares. Most people have never seen the movie, and they never will.
I feel like I have to say this out loud, but it's like, I get virtue signaling, because I agree with the virtues of making sure people that have had a worse lot in life than you have get a hand, and they need help, and like, that's a wonderful virtue to have, and people should have that virtue. But when you take it to such an extreme and such a level where it's strictly moral posturing and less about helping, then I think it's gone poisonous. And I wonder if, looking back in 100 years' time, the way we looked at the Red Scare and went, holy shit, that was a weird time to be an American. Yet most Americans probably felt like they were just standing up for, capitalist values and, spies and all that. And I'm sure we're like, wow, I don't know what I would have thought of the Red Scare if I lived through it. I wonder what people are going to think of the social justice period the United States is experiencing, because we are leaving scars. We are leaving true marks on our history with all this shit. With the amount of, anytime there's a violent crime perpetrated at the hands of, when it's a white on black crime, it takes this narrative, and we saw that with Smollett, and we are in a state of hysteria, truly a state of hysteria, as per the definition of historical moments of hysteria. And we're going to have to come out of this eventually. And I hope we're not too damaged or beat up to where we can't get back to ground level and say, like, all right, let's get back to liberal ideas. Let's make sure everyone has an equal opportunity, and let's stop treating each other like we're, strictly the product of our great-great-great-grandparents. You know what I mean? Because we're not. Like, let's get back to, I won't judge you by who your father was type of mentality that we once had. At least that was once touted as a value in the U.S. Like, you left your country behind to make a new way in the world, and you get that clean slate. And I'm not saying that immigrants or people of color or women haven't had issues with tons of terrible people, because they have. To this day. But we can only hope that there are more and more people who will refuse to treat people a specific way based on an attribute that they have no control over. And I think it's a mistake to say, well, we'll just reverse that and start giving people handouts or a leg up just because of the way they look or who they are. I think at the end of the day, we need to reward a meritocracy. We just need to get better at making sure people have opportunities and not look for the results so much. That's crazy talk.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I'd be very curious to see, if you really broke it down, how many artists lost work during the Red Scare because of McCarthyism, and how many artists are being stifled and censored today due to the social justice movement. It'd be
a hell of a graph, man. I would love to take a look at that.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll do that in a future stream. But
Sounds like a plan.
that said, I think it's time to wrap this one up. You know, don't go see movies or do whatever. I don't care. And thanks for tuning in. Um, support independent creators.
Yeah, do that.
All right. Have a good night. Bye bye.